of winter work that we do every winter and most of the and part of the spring. So getting back into that cycle, I was not able to make it to the meeting, but it definitely looked like y'all are trying to do some great things revolving around the climate and particularly around here in Durham. But I'm sure that you're also going to be in touch with people like AOC and others around the country so that it is a part of this global movement and everything. But tell us a little bit about the meeting, what the meeting was about, and how that might even play in your school board run.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I was super grateful that we had great turnout. We had people coming out and just expressing, their take on what are the issues that we need to be fighting for, or issues that we need to come together around. One of the things was transportation. We had the city and county and many constituents in Durham had ideas about the light rail project, and now that's not happening, then what do we do about transportation? What are some of the ways? So, there were folks who came out there because that was their thing. They wanted to talk about transportation. We have the affordable housing crisis. We have like the McDougal Terrace situation with sewage behind the buildings. We have carbon monoxide. We have like an infestation of roaches and also just lack of repair, of the neglect and lack of repair of public housing facilities. And so one of the things is like how can we ensure that we are advocating and that we are not leaving people out when we're talking about environmental racism. That's environmental racism. When you have sewage, you have sanitation that is not being unsanitary living conditions. It's environmental racism when there's neglect. And so some of these topics, and when we hear about what's happening in other places, it's happening here in Durham. So there are a lot of folks who were there looking at public housing and looking at ways that our group can work towards that. And so many thoughts, many great ideas. The best ideas come from directly affected folks. There's also people who care and people who are allies. And what we've seen with McDougal Terrace is that a lot of people have volunteered, and they've stepped up to provide support. So this is a way to kind of break away from the silos. This is a way for, just building on what you were talking about, the article, people who are isolated. We should be really intentional about ensuring that we are not isolating any community, any family, or any individual at whatever level. If there's any group that is not at the table, we need to start looking at who's not at the table. And that was something that we asked tonight. We're like, we want to make sure that the people who are showing up to talk about climate change, environmental racism, that we are, including as many voices. And the room had good representation, and we had a good start. And this is just the beginning. So we're going to continue to work to amplify voices. We're going to continue to offer, the invitation and put it out for community members to speak on what environmental racism looks like to them. What does it look like if you live in East Durham? What are some of the concerns that are happening in East Durham? What are the concerns that are happening in different neighborhoods? What does it look like in public housing? What does it look for like in the Fayetteville Street corridor and many other places? So these are conversations that need to be community driven. These are conversations you need to be having. Another topic that was there was one that is with schools and how to have energy efficient solar panels. Schools that are energy efficient and have solar panels. So for the first part, just realizing that our school district is not energy efficient at all. Knowing that we don't have adequate staffing, that it has been almost going on 2 years that we have not had an energy sustainability coordinator, which we used to have, and that there's nobody looking at, what our use or energy use is. I know there was like changes in some schools where they were putting lighting. They were moving into LED lights. But those projects, I mean, what is the current state of those projects, and what is an energy audit? Where are those energy audits for the expenditures that are happening at each at the building level? So lots of questions as to are we doing the necessary due diligence to find research on best practices? Are we tapping into things that have worked even with our neighbors? So somebody was mentioning that Orange County has good reports that they put out about how their schools are on track for energy and sustainability goals. And so, it's worth us looking into these things. It's worth us also ensuring that our kids are not in trailers. It's like we have kids that are in trailers. So as we look at the redistricting, we're looking at so many of these different decisions that the school board is going to be looking at. I mean, we need to take all these considerations into account. We need to look at we need to look at some of these efforts to reduce waste and use of plastics in our schools. I know that there Don't Waste Durham and has come to a couple of schools through PTAs and partnerships with the PTAs. I was actually at Club Boulevard when our PTA was talking about it, and I was super enthused about it. And I went to a Don't Waste Durham meeting and was super grateful that this partnership could happen. And what it was that as kids were eating their lunches, we were starting to sort the trash, and we were letting the kids know this is compostable. So if it's food items, they go here. If it's utensils, go here. And we were just teaching kids and modeling for kids what it means to be environmentally conscious and aware, and explaining a little bit about the composting. So parents could come in during the lunchtime. Some parents were coming in, and some parents were like, "This is a good opportunity to make sure your kids, the kids are actually eating." That they were just so much concern for all the oranges that get thrown in the garbage can. That just go in there, the whole pile, like the whole tray kind of goes in there with all the oranges and all the things that it's like. There's a mom who's like, this is good to kind of be in here and to kind of see what's happening. So many opportunities for people to get involved. The grandparents, somebody in the group is talking about, the things that grandparents can do, because parents are working, but that doesn't preclude other family members from joining and volunteering. So there's so many opportunities, Mark. There's so many opportunities.
Yes.
I'm super grateful for this meeting and for, the energy that everybody brought to the meeting and the ideas, the creative ideas that we're going to be building on.
One of the things that I know people were really impressed by, particularly with your campaign, and I think it was one or two other campaigns, is there's all the talk all the time here in Durham about the various political action campaigns, the political action committees, and how they're sometimes at the head of each other or at the throats of each other. But in your case, the two that are, I guess, the primary ones that don't always necessarily see eye to eye have both endorsed you. So you got the endorsement of both the Durham Affairs and the People's Alliance. So I've noted that probably was something that was exciting to you and everything, was that you got not just the endorsement of one of these powerful committees, but both of them, and that they both saw the merits of your campaign.
I am super grateful. I'm telling you, Durham Committee on the Affairs of Black People, People's Alliance, it just means a lot to me that, that's Durham. It's like the people of Durham have given me their vote of confidence in these endorsement meetings. So I'm super grateful for that, and just, like I said, energized and continue to have these conversations, because I realize that this is a race. We have candidates, everybody has their own merit, and the thing is, these conversations that we need to have about what each of us, brings. And for me, it's very clear. I've been, I'm a part of this community. My connections, my network, my family, it's like, where I've been, the experiences that have shaped me are very, it's Durham. There's a whole lot in here about being somebody who graduated from Hillside High School here, and knowing that in the 90s, late 90s, what that was like. There weren't that many Latino students in Hillside at that time, and I just do remember starting with my family coming in here and opening a church. In '98, like opening a church and getting lost and coming up and seeing a reverend, seeing a lady preacher who was like, super nice to us and welcomed us into her church home and said, you can come and have meetings here. You can have church in my church, and open her doors to us. And it's just these stories of, for me to come in and get the endorsement of the Durham Committee in the Affairs of Black People, it's knowing that all along the way people have been opening doors for me. That Durham has given me so much, and that I have so much in terms of like commitment, and in terms of desire, and in terms of just experience, experience here in the city. That I bring all that. I'm bringing all of that into whatever role. And in this case, I am going for the school board seat.
And what do you think will be your primary issues that you'll be trying to focus on in the school board race? If you had to say one or two issues that will be your primary issues that you want to focus on, because every candidate and every campaign has certain things that they want to focus on.
My platform is DPS. It's DPS, so dismantling the school-to-prison pipeline, all the pipelines, in whatever ways we are disenfranchising our youth. So prioritizing equity and wellness. I want, what does wellness look like for teachers? What does wellness look like for students? What does it mean for people with disabilities? Wellness, equity. We need to make sure that equity is at every level whether it's advanced placement courses, opportunities for immersion in science or, what STEM, which is something that is also near dear to my heart. I want to make sure that equity is centered every step of the way in every single process that we have. And then supporting marginalized communities. I think that, just we want to fight against those silos, and when you were mentioning people who feel isolated, a lot of our marginalized communities, you can tell who's marginalized by the isolation. So, we have so many Latino parents who feel isolated from the school buildings. They come into the school buildings, they drop off their kids, they're not a part of the community in that school. They're not having the conversations with the teachers, they're not having that. We have a lot of black families who don't feel welcome in certain buildings. They feel like they're marginalized. They feel like they're not, at the center of the processes and decision making that is happening at the schools. We have people, teachers that don't disclose their disabilities because they feel like that's going to lead to more problems than they want to deal with. And so for me, it's supporting so that we don't have any silos, so we don't have anybody feeling isolated. So when you were mentioning that article, it really rung true because part of the thing is that we're in this together and we say it, but we need to make sure we show it and we implement processes that reduce, and mitigate against these dynamics where we push people out, where we disenfranchise folks, where our own youth are being sent to alternative schools and we're not supporting them in their learning and in their growth. So that's my platform.
Yeah, because it's really interesting because a lot of times people forget how many silos there are. We've talked about this before, even within the different communities. Like, there's the black middle class and the black lower class and the black wealthy. And there's definitely the whole light and dark thing that still exists even in the 21st century and everything. And then there's different other kinds of ways that we divide ourselves. And people also try to do the same thing with the Latin community, where they try to put all of y'all in one boat, knowing good and well that I don't even know if you count Central America, how many countries there are, but there's at least, I would think, 20 or 25, if not more. Because like I said, I haven't done the count, but I know it's a bunch.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, when we start having conversations with each other, we realize our differences and we realize, our perspectives and how those are shaped differently. It's very different for somebody. Like for me, I came to the States when I was 5 years old. I have the immigrant journey. I walk through deserts, I know what it is like to jump a fence, and it's like that is a very different thing. We talk about trauma in our kids. We talk about, what trauma looks like. And for many kids living in the midst of community violence, it's like for a lot of families who come from Central America where we've had climate change affecting, flooding our lands, not being able to thrive and not being able to live, and you're fighting for your own life. So, there's all these perspectives of what everybody brings. It's not the same thing as somebody who comes from a social class and, gets on a plane and has a different entry into this country, and even that reception and that receptivity or welcome is very different. So it's the policies that we talk about when we have people in Florida that are voting one way, and their journeys have been maybe a little different. There was dry foot, wet foot policies that enabled many people who are immigrants to come in and have housing and have the supports they needed, but that was not afforded to people coming in through the border, right? So many different questions about what those experiences have been. But the reality is that we are different, that we may have different backgrounds, we may have different origin stories, we may have different journeys, but there's something very central to things here in Durham. And the thing that is very central and unifying is that we see what's happening. We see what's happening with our youth. We see what's happening with our workforce. We see what's happening with our crime rates. We see what is happening in our communities in terms of safety and, stabilization and opportunity. So because we know that these dynamics are happening, regardless of your background, regardless of whether you have, you're a second generation, third generation college student, or you're first generation, you're an English learner, regardless of these things, we know what safety means. We know what opportunity means. And so can we work together to ensure that we are doing the best for all our kids? Can we ensure that, can we talk to each other and figure out for different perspectives? So I like the movements that are bringing black and brown folks together to talk about the fact that I saw a post from a journalist, and he was talking about the journeys. I mean, this is Carl Kenny. He said one of his things is that he tells black families and Latino families to understand each other's journey. For Latino families who have had to flee flee up north, you know, to be able to live, to survive, you know, and you know, knowing that they're leaving behind